Hello, friends. Thanks for joining me today. We're taking a look at chapter 5, verses 1 through 11 in 2 Peter, and here Peter addresses the elders of the churches among his readers. And what does he know? He surely knows that the fidelity of a church depends to a great extent upon her leaders. The church rises or falls on her leadership. So, spiritual leadership is very important. Well, it's essential, isn't it? He describes himself in a way that would seem to obtain a receptive hearing among his readers. He calls himself a fellow elder. He is saying just there that he knows the problems elders face and he can speak with full understanding of them. I like the way he introduces himself as that and as a person who is suffering in the Lord as well as they are. And his encouragement to them is that they would tend God's flock. Now, that's shepherd language, isn't it? He is exhorting elders to be shepherds, reminding them that they are also stewards. That is, the flock they lead is the flock of God. It belongs to God. That's verse 2. And how are they to tend the flock? Well, Peter says that they are not to perform their tasks as men pressed into duty, nor should they have to be urged to do their work. They should not do their work for financial gain. What Peter condemns here is the use of the office in a mercenary way, and they are not to domineer or lord it over those in their charge. Rather, he says, they are to be examples to the flock. Surely, elders wield their greatest influence for good by living exemplary lives, models after which God's children may pattern their lives. And then Peter writes that when the chief shepherd appears, they will receive their reward, honor, and glory. A crown that never fades away. And a part of this encouraging remark in verse 4 is also the encouragement to remember that God's shepherds have a shepherd over them. They are under shepherds, under Jesus himself. Now, I want to encourage you all just here to do some shoulder tapping. Just as there is a shortage of gospel preachers among us today, I believe there's a shortage of faithful shepherds who will lead the churches. Don't you agree? Many men seem to be so hesitant to take on the important responsibilities of leading and shepherding God's people. So let me ask you, would you please take a moment to think about the men you know whom you believe would make fine shepherds of God's flock. Go to those men and encourage them to consider serving in this way. Pray for them and let them know that you are praying for them. We need more godly servants, more godly leaders. Now I want to talk about just a little bit about Peter's thoughts in verses 5 through 11 as he begins to wrap up this particular letter. Remember, these are Christians who are suffering for the name of Christ or who are soon to be suffering for the name of Christ. And what does Peter want to say to them by way of encouragement and warning as he closes this particular letter? Well, first of all, he wants to urge them to be humble, to humble themselves, and to show true humility toward one another. The reason he gives for humility is that God gives grace to the humble, and he opposes the proud. And Peter reminds them of the mighty hand of God, which shows God's power and ability. And with such power, God is able to do what? Certainly able to exalt his people in due time, even those who humble themselves. He writes that we should cast all of our anxieties upon God. That's verse 7. And why? Because God cares for us, Peter says. The Christian God is a God who cares for us. Our God is a God who cares for us. There's no need then for us, or for the suffering Christians to whom Peter writes, to trust in our own strength. We can trust ourselves to God's care and keeping because we know that he cares for us and that he has a mighty hand. Peter wants his readers to remember that they do have an adversary, right? And that adversary is real and powerful, and he's the devil, and he is like a lion on the prowl, Peter writes. He does not want his readers to, us included, he doesn't want us to wait passively for the Lord to subdue Satan for us. No, he wants us to put up a fight and to depend on the Lord for help. So he writes, discipline yourselves, keep alert, resist the devil, and remain steadfast in the faith. That's his encouragement. Pardon me. He also wants his readers to know that they are not alone in their sufferings, that others are going through similar sufferings right along with them. That would encourage them. And then there is verse 10. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful verse this is. Verse 10, let me read it for you. It's just precious as it can be. And after you have suffered for a little while, Peter wants them to know that their suffering is only temporary. After you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, I love that phrase, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ. We've been called to share in the honor and glory that belongs to God. Isn't that wonderful? I've got to back up. Who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ will himself restore, support, strengthen, and establish you. Oh my goodness. How powerful is that? God himself, by his presence, will himself restore, support, strengthen, and establish you. And then we have this doxology in verse 11. It's a statement of praise in which Peter wants his readers to be impressed with the majesty and the power of God. This power and dominion that belongs to God, Peter says, is forever and ever. It will never fade away. And isn't this a comforting thought to each of us, no matter what we're going through? Well, what I want to underline in this particular passage is the warning that the devil is here, and that he's real, and that he's powerful. And we may not often think about this, that we're in a battle with him. But our God is powerful, and his power is greater than that of anyone else, including the devil. And that's a great encouragement for us. Well, my next video will come out, number 12. I think it will come out on the 19th of June. That's a little ways off. And that's when we'll begin reading and praying through 2 Peter. Soon we will finish 1 Peter, and then we'll take a 1-week break. So in our next video, I'll have a few introductory remarks to Peter's second letter. Until then, God bless you so much.